The festival had filled the town square with color and clamor. Paper lanterns swung overhead, casting warm circles of light across cobblestones slick with confetti. Vendors called out from booths selling roasted nuts, sweet cakes, and painted toys. Musicians on makeshift stages sent fiddles and drums tumbling into the night air. Families crowded shoulder to shoulder, the rhythm of laughter rising as fireworks cracked faintly in the distance. At the heart of it all, a group of children stood on a wooden platform, no higher than a doorstep. Their cheeks were flushed, some from excitement, others from nerves. They clutched songbooks printed on paper already creased from rehearsals. A teacher stood to the side, gesturing for quiet. The crowd softened, conversations dropping into a gentle murmur. The children began to sing. Their voices were small at first, uneven as they found the melody together. It wasn't a festival song about harvest or joy or luck, but something older, slower. The words carried weight beyond their years, speaking of journeys unfinished, of lives cut short but remembered, of promises to carry memory forward. It was a song often reserved for memorials, taught in schools, to remind the young of those who came before. Sung here, in the middle of lanterns and laughter, it felt almost out of place until the crowd began to listen. One by one, voices hushed. Vendors paused mid-sale. Parents bent down to explain softly to children too small to understand. The square itself seemed to grow still, as if giving the song room to breathe. And then, from the edge of the crowd, he appeared. The tomb guard walked without hurry, his coat plain, his bearing unmistakable. Shoulders straight, chin lifted, every step measured with the same discipline he carried before the tomb. People noticed immediately, whispers rippling through the crowd. What was he doing here among lanterns and music so far from the eternal flame? He stopped at the edge of the children's platform. For a moment, he simply stood, listening. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes seemed to hold the weight of every verse. The children, catching sight of him, faltered slightly, their voices wobbling with surprise. The teacher raised her hands, urging them on, but their eyes kept darting back to the tall figure in the crowd. And then, something unexpected happened. The guard stepped forward, closer to the platform. He did not climb it, did not take the teacher's place, but simply stood beside the children. When the chorus came, a line heavy with promise, one that spoke of standing watch until dawn, his voice joined theirs. It was deep, steady, carrying through the square without need of a microphone. The children looked at him, startled, then steadied their voices, encouraged. The melody grew stronger, richer, as though anchored by his presence. The crowd froze. To see a tomb guard sing was almost unthinkable. They were statues of silence, figures bound to stillness and solemnity. To hear one lend his voice especially to this song felt like history itself had bent to join the living. Some wept immediately, others clasped their hands over their hearts. A soldier in uniform saluted instinctively. Parents lifted their children higher on their shoulders so they would not miss the sight. The guard did not falter. His eyes stayed forward, his face calm, his voice unshaken. But something passed through the square as he sang, a current of memory, of sacrifice, of gratitude that tightened every throat. When the verse ended, the children carried on, their voices brighter now, as though his strength had become their own. The crowd leaned forward, hushed, waiting to see if he would sing again. And he did. At the final chorus, when the words spoke of carrying names carved in stone within living hearts, his voice rose once more. Deep, resonant, not overpowering but blending, lifting the children's song until it seemed to fill every lantern, every stone of the square. When the last note faded, silence followed. No applause, no cheers, just silence, thick and reverent, as if the square itself was bowing. The guard stepped back, letting the children take their final bow. He offered no gesture, no explanation. He simply returned to the edge of the crowd, his silence restored. But the square knew it had witnessed something extraordinary. The meaning of the song, its weight, its promise was no longer abstract. It had been embodied, carried in the voice of the sentinel, who usually spoke only through stillness. And though no one yet understood the deeper truth of why he had sung, every soul present knew instinctively. The night had changed. The final note hung in the night air like incense, fragile yet unbroken. The lanterns swayed gently above, their light dimmed not by wind but by the collective hush of hundreds of people who dared not move. The children on the platform clutched their songbooks to their chests, their eyes wide as if they too sensed they had been part of something larger than a performance. The tomb guard stood just beyond them, silent once more. His voice had blended into theirs and now it was gone, but the memory of it lingered. The crowd seemed unable to decide what to do. Clapping felt wrong. Cheering felt smaller than the weight in their chests. So they remained quiet. And in that quiet, the meaning of the song began to settle over them. It was an old song, older than most could recall, sung in fields after wars ended, sung in kitchens where empty chairs waited. Its words carried the promise that those who had fallen would not be forgotten, that those who lived would bear their memory forward. For the children, it had been just another piece their teacher had chosen. For the guard, it was a vow he lived every day. And when he had sung it, the vow was no longer history, it was present, alive, undeniable. A veteran in the crowd sank to his knees, tears streaking through the grime on his face. His daughter tried to pull him up, but he shook his head, staring at the guard as if seeing an old comrade. A mother pressed her hand to her child's chest, whispering, "Listen. Remember this." Vendors wiped their eyes behind their stalls. Strangers who had never spoken found themselves holding one another's hands. The teacher, overwhelmed, stepped forward. She tried to thank the guard, her voice trembling, but he raised a hand gently, stopping her. It wasn't refusal, it was reminder. Words were unnecessary. The song had already said everything. Then something remarkable happened. From the far end of the square, a man began to sing the first line again, his voice rough but determined. Another joined, then another. Within moments, the crowd itself had taken up the melody. Hundreds of voices, untrained but sincere, rose together. Children on the platform sang again, their eyes shining with sudden understanding. The guard did not lead, but he sang once more, his deep tone anchoring the chorus as lanterns flickered above like stars made human. When the second round of the song ended, silence returned, deeper than before. This time it was not confusion but reverence. People bowed their heads as if in prayer, though no prayer was spoken. Later, word spread that the guard had sung, because the song was not just about sacrifice in general, it was about a specific group of fallen soldiers, men who had died in a forgotten skirmish decades earlier. It was enough to have heard, enough to have remembered. Among them had been his grandfather. Few people knew the connection, and fewer still knew that his grandfather's name had been lost in the shuffle of records. The guard had grown up hearing fragments of the song at family gatherings, his grandmother humming it when grief pressed too close. For him, singing it was not performance but promise, a vow to carry forward the voice of someone the nation had nearly forgotten. They realized that when the guard had joined the children, he had not simply sung a song, he had carried memory into the present, placing his own family's grief alongside the collective memory of the collective memory. Nation, done. When this truth emerged, the town felt the weight of the moment even more deeply. His voice had tied the past to the living, making every listener a bearer of that promise. The festival was never the same afterward. In years to come, when lanterns swung and drums rolled, the children's song always returned. Entire crowds learned it by heart, no songbooks needed. Families taught it to children before they even started school. Veterans stood with tears in their eyes each time, hearing their own lost brothers in the words. The town itself changed. Murals appeared on walls, not of the guard but of children singing beneath lanterns, their voices joined by a silent figure standing at their side. People told visitors, "This is where silence sang." And visitors, even strangers, left with wet eyes, touched by a story that needed no embellishment. The guard never sought recognition. He returned to his post, as always, standing motionless before the tomb. But those who came to see him after that day swore they could almost hear music in the silence around him, as though the square where he had once sung still echoed in his stillness. And the lesson endured. Remembrance is not only carved into stone or held in silence. Sometimes it must be sung by children who barely understand, sung by crowds who suddenly do, sung by a sentinel whose very life is the promise the song makes. Generations later, when people asked why the festival always paused for a single solemn song, amid the laughter and fireworks, parents told the story, because once, a tomb guard sang with children. And in that moment, the world remembered together.